What's up? What's going on? Welcome back. If you're here for the first time, what's cracking? Michael Cosrington reporting on a mic, doing something different. I'm holding the microphone today. Hopefully that doesn't affect our sound negatively in any way, but trust me, if it does, I'll stop doing it. But I just wanted to try it out. So we're gonna start today with the birthday shout out for the one and only Dr. Perry. Let's clap it up for Doc. Dr. Perry, he knows how special he is to me, and how much he means to me in my life. And now venturing into education, it's just a plus. The amount of people I know who have impacted me positively, who I still have, decent relationships with. I'm a really bad communicator. I'm sorry, guys. I really am. And it sucks. Like we have access to each other, but sometimes we have too much access. It's it can become overwhelming. But it always feels good to like reach out to teachers, talk to teachers, and then have them become friends, colleagues, whatever. Dr. Perry, big birthday shout out to the boss, to the man. There was definitely some birthdays I missed, but I also want to give a shout out to my dog Quest, Daniel James. Awesome guy, awesome guy. Got to cross paths with him in high school, and he's just been catching W's ever since. Daniel's an awesome dude, and he deserves everything coming his way. So, shout out to Doc, shout out to Daniel. But let's get into it. Speaking of Daniel, Jaden Daniels, we're going to talk about you next episode, buddy. But just understand, actually, no, I'm sorry. We have to talk about it this episode. I don't have it written down in the agenda to talk about the championship games because I was going to do a roundup for the next episode. But let's just do it. Episode 6. So we're going to start with the Howard men and women's basketball teams. We're going to talk a little bit about the coaching carousel that's going on in the NFL. And then we're going to wrap up looking at the championship games that occurred this past weekend. Obviously, this weekend coming up, there will be the Pro Bowl, whatever, if you want to call it that. But the Super Bowl is pretty soon, and I'm excited to see Dot. I'm excited to see K Dot. I've been a Kendrick fan since like 2012, probably 2013. So I'm excited to see him. Uh, let's start with the women's team. The women's team is in a similar position to the men's team as far as their MEAC standing right now. They're 3-1 in the conference. They started 3-0 and then they ran into a big bad Norfolk State. Let's just take a break real quick. There's a lot of people who maybe listen to this and maybe are following sports whose first interaction with Norfolk State was Michael Vick signing with them. And that's a shame because I don't think that you can name 40 or 50 schools that have not even, you can't even name 20 schools that have the equal funding that Norfolk has across the board and performs that well. Like if you scaled it for their performance by funding, obviously, they're going to be outperformed by the Blue Bloods. Texas, a report just came out that Texas spent $325 million in athletics last year. So, they're not spending that, but understand there are a few teams that have the resources that Norfolk has that has performed like Norfolk has. Kyle O'Quinn and them boys had the massive 15-2 upset a bunch of years ago, but that, I don't want them to just be reduced to a moment, which happens to a lot of those mid-major teams. We forget that they are pumping out some of these incredibly dedicated athletes, some of these incredibly talented athletes, and something that remains and that will always remain with Norfolk is that they recruit locally. They get some of the best talent out of Virginia because if you are an athlete and you're from the state of Virginia and you want to compete collegiately in Virginia, after UVA and Virginia Tech, right, there's not that many schools that kids grow up in and like they know about, like it's on their radar. Like kids need to be informed a lot earlier in life about all of the different colleges that are out there and all the options that they have. But after those two schools, if you're obviously, a black athlete and you want to maybe be in a familial place and you probably grew up around a lot of people and you want them to come to your games, come to your meets, things like that, why not Norfolk? And they are our biggest rival right now, Howard's biggest rival. If you look across the board, and this is obviously after NCAT leaves the conference and after Hampton leaves the conference and Bethune-Cookman and FAMU as well, they weren't as good across the board. But they all had powerhouses in places that created issues. So the women's team, Destiny Howell, Destiny Howe from the Bronx, Brooklyn, we in the building. Destiny and I went to school together for a couple years. I did not know her personally, but I would be in the weight room and I saw her work ethic and I saw her dedication. She is a bucket. Like I think I used to joke that she's HBCU Juju Watkins. Like her play style is really similar. She's kind of got like that big guard vibe to her. I think she's about 6 feet. Juju's obviously like 6'4", but to be like to be a 6 foot, to be a player that on most teams would be considered a post, but to handle the ball like a guard is a luxury that a lot of teams don't have. And Destiny Howe has been our luxury. She lost the 23-24 season with a torn ACL. And, that was one of the years that we lost to Norfolk in the championship. So you have to ask yourself, how does Destiny level that playing field? And if not, that again speaks to Norfolk. They beat us this past weekend in both men and women's basketball. Coach Ty Grace has done a really, really tremendous job, in my opinion, especially in the last couple of years. You see her vision come together. Like, I don't know what her idea was when she first got to Howard, right? I don't know if she's like, I want my team to look like this, or I want to play these players or whatever, as far as stylistic, as far as scheme. I don't know what her plans were, but what our team looks like is really, really beautiful, high skill basketball. They have an assistant coach. I think he's Coach Davis. He's been active in the team for the past couple of seasons, and you see the improvement. But you have players like Zaniah Thomas, Kentucky transfer, and she is another one of those players who can play like inside out basketball. I like watching her play a lot because she plays with a high motor and like the level of emotion that really fires you up. If you play basketball, you know what that's like. I know a lot of people who are like nonchalant almost when they hoop. Like people joke about that, nonchalant hoopers and all of that junk, but like that's a real thing when you're playing highly competitive basketball and stuff. Some people need to play like that to kind of remind themselves to be even keeled. Some people are just like that. And I think that if you are that player, you need to have players on your team who are going to ignite the rest of the team. And so Thomas ignites the team. She has been igniting the team, one of the leading scorers on the team this year. We had a win early in the season against a 7-1 Army team at home and against a pretty solid William & Mary team that was 3-1. We have our floor general, Sanaya King, freshman, and we recruit locally pretty well too. Shout out to Coach Grace and her team, all of her staff. Shout out to Coach Blakeney, who I'm going to get to in a second, and all of his staff, because they do recruit locally rather well. Obviously, Eli Hawkins is a local guy. There's it really goes up and down. Steve Settle, a player who right now is at Temple and playing really, really good basketball for Temple. Settle was 6'10", a $165 when he got to Howard. Some probably less. You asked him, he probably said he was probably 155. I don't know what he was. But the point was, Blakeney saw the vision. He helped turn it. People called him like baby KD or whatever at DeMatha, and it's hard to get on the floor at DeMatha. But Settles, he's got game. Steve Settles got game. So those are just some of the players locally that Blakeney was able to get. But as far as Ty Grace, Sanaya King is a local player who averages like 6 to 6.5 assists, depending on when you check. She does have to reduce them turnovers a little bit. I think she's at 3.1 to 3.3 turnovers per game. But when you have such a high usage rate that she does, that's something that's going to come naturally within time. And when you're a player who, has a combo of skill and finesse in the way that she does, that's also kind of going to happen naturally. But you don't get a version of Eli Hawkins that the Texas Tech team has without him, his freshman season at Howard, when he was like 4th in the country in assists per game, but 2nd or 3rd in the country in turnovers per game, right? I think that the 2021-2022 season that Howard had was not talked about enough, and that's probably a byproduct of coronavirus, the lack of coverage in women's sports, right? Like consistently. Yes, there are people who are doing the work, and you always want to shout those people out. You always want to recognize, right? A lot of people who have been putting on for the W, have been putting on for like women's gymnastics, and like kind of like painting these women's sports in the correct light that they should be painted in. But I say all that to say that the 2021-2022 team won the conference in dazzling fashion, and then they were placed in the first four. And I love the NCAA tournament. I really do. But I don't like seeing stuff like this when you have teams that have these tremendous stories that work so hard and then they get placed in the first four. What is that junk about? Of course, it's like some ratings, some chem pop ratings or whatever, but like it just sucks because these teams have such great stories. And yes, it's basketball at the end of the day, right? Like they're happy to be there. They still get all the shirts and all the bags and they stay in the hotels. But let them go in the regular 64. Why are we doing the 68 thing? And you have these teams that are 16 seeds that have to play or 11 seeds that have to play, but the other 16 and 11 seeds don't have to play. I don't like that. What's that about, right? Someone explain it to me like I'm five. But they beat Incarnate Word in the first four. That's huge. Coach Grace secured an NCAA tournament victory. So who do you get if you're the 16? Somebody tell me at home. I'm gonna wait. You get the one. Many coaches have talked at length about what Coach Grace brings to the school and what she brings to basketball, and how she's representing the HBCU front. You see Jackson State and what they're doing. Norfolk State obviously is a strong team. So there's a lot of really good HBCU teams. Um, and our team is one of them. You know, we're hooping right now. I'm proud of everybody that's involved in that operation. And something that cannot be overstated, and I think is uh, a contributor to a lot of Howard's success across the board in the last 2 years is proper investment in some of the resources behind the scenes. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but some of the proper investment in things behind the scenes that athletes need, I think has made a big difference. Speaking of, let's talk about Coach Blakeney's proposal. So over the summer, he essentially wrote up, I think, like a giant plan where he talked about, the worth of his program. And then he wanted to sell it to private investors for a third of a stake in the team for $100 million. I saw a guy post a TikTok about this. I can't remember his name, but it was funny because he was like, I don't know where he got that $300 million valuation. I think that's pretty fair because you don't know how many years that's over, right? But the team is clearly very profitable. There's many, many players on the team who are NIL gold mines, so to speak. Blake Harper, so like right now, Bryce Harris. You saw Bryce's clip go viral when we lost in the NCAA tournament. I think to Wagner. Like, I mean, Seth Towns last year, who was, the 8, 9, 10-year player everyone wanted to make fun of, but he was hitting step back game winners off bad ACLs on our team while studying about Horton Spillers and Harriet Tubman down the street. Like that dude was a serious hooper, and the connection that Blakeney had with him was so clear. He's gotten Ty Thornton to coach with him from Duke, another Duke guy. So his staff is really just like his staff is really just like straight Duke and Dematha guys. And then he got the one guy recently. I can't remember his name. He's a shorter coach. I think he was like a news guy before, but I'm not really sure what he does specifically, like what his logistical roles are, planning roles are. But you can tell he's meshing with the team as well. You just kind of see from their social media presence, which is very big. Like that valuation is not off from whatever you think it should be. That one guy. That's my only critique on his TikTok, because the rest of his TikTok was pretty good. It covered our team in a fair light. This team, this 2024-2025 team, it's interesting. The complexion of the teams are always hard-nosed guys. Blakeney likes to have length on his teams. I had mentioned Settle before. He would run lineups with Settle at the 4, and he would play Jordan Wood at the 5, and maybe like Miles Stewart at the 3, Foster at the 2, about 6'5", and then Hawk at the 1. And sometimes Bryce would go in the game, and that was a couple years ago. So like he likes length, he likes shooting, he likes to have a floor general kind of guy. Even Khalil Robinson and Thomas Dockery, who didn't get a ton of action for them, were like floor general type players. Jelani Williams, hard nosed guy, right? Couple ACL tears. He was on the team the past 2 years. He's not on the team this year, but both years he was on the team, right? He's got those MEAC rings. Came from Penn, University of Penn. But and that's another thing. The portal, right? So the portal has created these Ivy League guys who essentially find, HBCUs, but HBCUs also find them. I think they're starting to understand what kind of sell is that. Like, no, there's not a lot of people who can just say, okay, I went to the number 1, 2, 3 HBCU, and I went to the number 1, 2, 3 Ivy League institution. So that is like a pretty sweet deal. A lot of the schools are in like culture rich places, so that's a pretty interesting sell. It's not glamorous to live anywhere if you don't have the cost of living funds that you'd imagine or whatever. So like McCord Maker, when he came to Howard, people roasted him because he posted a tweet like studying for my finals, and he was in like this penthouse. So people were like, dang, he got money. So yeah, if you play in DC and you have a little money to live somewhere that's not like some of the student housing right next to the gym, then yeah, like that, there's tons of things to think about when you see that pipeline, because we've gotten a lot of Ivy League guys. But one dude that I want to see get more action when he's healthy is Dom Campbell, with transfer we got from Notre Dame, about 6'9", 270. He plays inside out. He can shoot the trade ball. Did a year. I don't know if he did a year or a couple at Exeter, but I saw he went to Exeter. He was actually in that game, uh, Eli Hawkins' first year, where we played Notre Dame on MLK Day, and we almost beat them. We lost by like 2 or 3. That Notre Dame team, I think they had Nate Lazuski and Cormac Ryan getting buckets for them, and Blake Wesley, the point guard. He was a sight to see in real life. This 24-25 team has been dominated by Blake Harper. They have like 4 lefty guards. I'm not sure. And when I was speaking about the complexion, that's kind of one of the things I was like alluding to. I don't know if that was by design or not. It's really interesting when you see a team have an abundance of left-handed players in a world that doesn't have that many left-handed people. Marcus Dockery, Anwar Gill, Blake Harper, all these guys are lefties. They can attack you right from both sides of the floor, from inside out. Dockery, when he's hitting those threes, it really opens up his game to get under the rim, open up his passing a little bit. He's like a true 2, in my opinion. Dockery, he's a true 2 guard. He can get the ball in the cup. Miles Stewart has evolved a lot in his past couple of years. Like he's a strong dude. I like I said before with the comment about Destiny, how I didn't talk to a lot of these people. It was a lot of like ships passing in the night. We do stuff as a team, blah blah. But Miles Stewart, he's a strong guy, very strong guy, and you can see it on the court. And he does a lot of what Bryce does, and that's good because Bryce is injured right now. I think he might have broken his fibula, which is a shame if that's what it is. Because I saw him in a boot a couple of times. I doubt it would be like a grade 3. It has to be like a bad grade 3 high ankle for him to just be in a boot. It's probably a broke fibula. But Bryce Harris is our engine. So we go as when we're healthy, we go as Bryce goes. So I'd imagine when healthy, Blakeney would want to trot out. What's the guard's name who's in law school? I can't remember bro name. Dylan Strong. Dylan Strong at the 1, Dockery at the 2, Harper at the 3, Bryce at the 3 or Harper at the 3, Bryce or Harper at the 4, and Campbell at the 5. I think that's what he wants to trot out. Cameron Shockley Okeke is playing some good ball for us as well. Let me tell you the funny thing about that guy too. We saw him play. He was on Cormac Ryan's I think he was on Cormac Ryan's Milton team. Because he went to Milton, Cormac Ryan did, and he was the truth. But I'm pretty sure that guy played with him at Milton. He was a beast. Another lefty. Okay, he was a beast. 21-22, that was a funny year because we were great in the regular season, but then we lost to Coppin State, which a team that had only had 4 wins outside of us. And then they beat us 3 times, twice in the regular season and once in the playoffs. That's unacceptable. They also had a wild season that year. I think they had a lot of internal things going on, and they beat us, and they knocked us out. 2022-23, we came out with a vengeance. We won the MEAC. MEAC had an abundance of strong players that year, including, I believe, Joe Bryant was still playing for them at that time. Joe Bryant Jr. He used to wear number 4 for Norfolk. He was to get buckets. Oh my goodness. A couple years ago, we also had a fight with them. That's how deep that thing runs. But then we lost to Kansas, and just watch the first half of that Kansas game and tell me that Howard team doesn't deserve one more year together or one more game together. We lost to Kansas in the tournament, and after the first half, it was 31-33, something like that. That Howard team also played Kentucky at the start of the – actually, no, sorry. The team the year before them played Kentucky at the start of the year. No, I was right. They played Kentucky. The team the year before them played Villanova, and they played them to a really good game. And watch the first half of that game. We were shooting lights out versus Villanova. 23-24, they were champs again, and then they lost to Wagner in the first four. That's when you have that viral clip of Bryce, like I said, when he was crying and talking about his the value of going to HBCU, the value of Coach Blakeney. But in my opinion, Bryce is the ceiling for that team. Blake Harper can't be ignored, but he's a freshman. So at times he's going to do freshman things. And back to the high usage point about King, he might have some times where he's going to turn the pill over, right? If you're not making shots around him, you don't let him do what he does. The guy got a 30-point triple-double, right? I think it was against Virginia Lynchburg. Who cares? He got a 30-point triple-double in college basketball. So it tells you his ability. Local guy, Gonzaga. Let's talk about the NFL. Let's transition. Let's talk about the NFL. So there's been a coaching carousel going on. Lots of coordinators moving around. Eberflus is at DC now for the Dallas Cowboys. Schottenheimer's their head coach. Let's start with Dallas. So I think that if you're a Cowboy fan, then you have really strong opinions about this. And I'm going to be honest, I don't. As a Giant fan and as a member of the NFC East, I know that the big teams in the NFC East just played last week. And Dallas is trying to break out of that and be in between them at the very least. There's no way that you're better than both of them next year, but at the very least, be in between them, be in the mix, be competitive, and kill the Giants and win games that you feel like are winnable or gimme games. That's what the Cowboys want to do in an idealistic world. Is it an idealistic world? No. So the Cowboys have Brian Schottenheimer, and Jerry Jones said at the press conference, "This is a big risk. I've never done this." He has no head coaching experience. These are all true statements. I don't know if that's the best statement to get off right next to Mr. Schottenheimer, but the point stands that he's pretty loved in the building. Schottenheimer is a humble guy. He assumed that, one or two guys would come to his press conference. A lot of guys came to his press conference. You see the way that they interact with Schottenheimer. I like the hire for them. I wish them well, but at the end of the day, it's going to be for Dallas. It's always going to be about culture and personnel. Winning is always going to be about culture and personnel. So if he can focus on those two things, they'll be successful. The New York Jets, they got Aaron Glenn as their head coach, defensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. He also was a first-round pick for the New York Jets in, I think, 1994, something like that. That boy Unk. But Aaron Glenn, vicious player, fast guy. And he talked about on the pivot how when he retired from the NFL, he kind of got into the restaurant business and he was successful, but it wasn't him. And so he got back into coaching and he started at the bottom and he learned everything. And from my experience, those usually make the best coaches. The ones who, if they even like you normally, obviously you want someone who played at that high level in certain situations, but also who express that willingness to learn and then show it through their action. So it's one thing to say, "Hey, I want to do this." It's another thing to do it. So he expressed through his action that he was serious about being an NFL coach. And you didn't see him get fast tracked. You didn't see him be careless with his work. You see that viral photo of him in the snow with not even seeing out his glasses, calling a masterclass. He is a serious dude. I like this hiring for the Jets. Again, it's going to be about personnel for the Jets, but less so that, and I think more so egos. And obviously that falls within personnel. So, the egos of the personnel. But I'm not saying that their scheme is bad or that their players are bad. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, straight 1,000-yard years, like Sauce Gardner, their players, Quentin Williams, their players aren't bad. But it's the ego thing and it's the entitlement thing that's clearly permeated the building. How do you get that out? How do you reestablish, that we are New York Jets, right? And how do you get them to be competitive in a division that now has Mike Vrabel, who is going to help the Patriots with the giant cap space that they have and with Drake Mays, his maturation and his game management. Vrabel is known for his incredible game management skills. So there's a lot to like about the Vrabel hiring. I'm kind of transitioning into that one because Glenn has to worry about Vrabel. He also has to worry about Josh Allen, who's probably at home crying about losing in the Super Bowl, but not that sad because he is scheduled to get married soon. But And, the Dolphins are the Dolphins. I don't know what the Dolphins are going to look, the complexion of the Dolphins will look like, or the team. This is probably Mike McDaniel's last year to try stuff. If he flames out and he goes to the podium making them goofy jokes like he likes to make, they're not going to let that fly for one more year. And then there's a lot of players on that team who have a great potential. Chop Robinson, Jalen Ramsey has expressed some discomfort with the team, but I still think he's a top 10 corner when healthy. So, competitive division. Mike Vrabel, whether you like it or not, is the Patriots head coach. The way that they went about it, I'm not a big fan of. But the fact remains that Vrabel is a very qualified coach, and he's there. Okay. I believe the players love playing for him, but Drake May, who fraudulently made the Pro Bowl, Drake May is a guy that you also want to play for. I liked him a lot coming out of college. I thought he was a guy the Giants could have looked into. You don't normally draft quarterbacks from basketball schools like UNC, but hey, Drake May can spin that thing. And his brother Luke May, who was a UNC basketball legend. And one thing that I think that scouts care about is if an athlete had siblings and if they were competitive with their siblings. Obviously, that's not the end be all mark, but I think in a world where you're splitting hairs to draft somebody, that's something that they consider. You do think about those players that applies to. There's Rondi and Tiki Barber. They grew up together. They were beating each other up. They Eli Peyton and Cooper Manning. Obviously, Cooper didn't make it the whole way, but again, brothers, tons of resources. These are all case by case situations. But there's lots of brothers in the league, maybe for that reason. The Griffin brothers, Shaquem and Shaquille, right? I think the most underrated hire might be Pete Carroll to the Raiders. I wish great things for Pete Carroll in his health. He's a very lively, older guy, and he knows football. Pete Carroll is a winner through and through. Everywhere he's been, he's won. Every single place that he's been, he has won. And there's a reason for that. His passion for the game cannot be denied. And I think that's also why, I like watching Harbaugh coach, Jim Harbaugh. You can have your gripes about his sanctions, his Connor Stallion situation, but I like watching Jim Harbaugh coach. So it's the energy, He's got that energy. Pete Carroll's got that energy. Last hiring, Ben Johnson to the Bears. I don't like this one. Just plainly. I think that Caleb Williams has made himself pretty hard to coach. He's made himself pretty hard to coach. He only likes to play well out of structure, but he's continually learning structure. And then he's going to be like, I got you. And he's going to go in the game and do whatever he wants. You could shore up the old line all you want. You could get him one more really, really good receiver. I think he's going to keep doing that. He's got to anticipate the fact that the defensive backs in the NFL are way faster. The D linemen are bigger and stronger and faster. But what is going to unlock his game the most would be a back to unlock his game. I love DeAndre Swift. And he probably has one of the better high school mixtapes ever. But I think he's not the guy for them. He's not the guy. They need like a Josh Jacobs. They need like a Josh Jacobs kind of guy on their team. Just back there with Caleb Williams. And make it multiple backs. Give my son Ian Wheeler some carries. Make it multiple backs, because there's a reason that a lot of teams in the league are successful with running the football. It's because they have more than one threat running the football. Why is that hard for people to understand? They were on Twitter saying that Saquon Barkley was cheating the Giants his final years, and he wasn't running hard and all this stuff. It's easy to stop anybody when they're the only one who's going to run the football. If your quarterback is not going to run, you need at least two running backs, or you need like a Deebo Samuel type. That's one thing that Kyle Shanahan was really good about, right? His offense, super complex, the Shanahan offense tree, whatever. I'm not getting into that. The point is that they were successful because they will have a running back, they'll have a non-running quarterback, but then they'll let their receivers run, and their backup running backs will be capable as well. That's one of the reasons that they're successful. Obviously, the O-line, obviously the scheme, but give some flexibility. Give some flexibility. Mr. Duval, Liam Cohen was hired, and there was a lot of drama in the news about that. I'm going to talk about that on a separate episode in the interest of time and my computer battery, but I think that he has a lot to work with as well. Evan Ingram, Thomas, Brian Thomas Jr., both coming off some injuries and surgeries, but those are dynamic guys. Trevor Lawrence, ETN. You can draft some more skill guys. Walker Little at left tackle. What's the DN? DN, number 1 pick. What's the brother name? They was giving him flack. Walker, Trayvon Walker. Double-digit sacks. Come on now. They got players out there. They got players. So what is he going to do to make the destination enticing, is my opinion, because Trevor Lawrence hasn't done enough to make the destination enticing. Yeah, I want money in free agency. Yeah, I want to play for an exciting new coach who is known for, some positive offensive stuff going on. But Trevor Lawrence, to me, has not shown enough in the NFL to warrant like a high-quality receiver, like a going out there. Your best bet would be T. Higgins, because they have that rapport, from college. Get the whole band back together. That could work. But you see the struggles with trying to keep stuff to college or trying to act like you get the band back together at the next level. It doesn't always work out. So just be weary of that. But I think that it's a possibility. To end out the episode today, we are going to get into the divisional games. But before we do that, the song of the week. Shout out to Jack McGranahan. Wherever he's at in this world, the pride of Ireland, Jack McGranahan. I think Jack is, when you play his music in your Spotify, it says alternative, and he's really genreless. He has songs that any kind of person would like, in my opinion. If you like good music, if you don't, you don't. And every music is not for everybody. I'm really aware of that, and that's why I don't try to put every third person on to every person on the planet. There's some things that you just hold so dear because you fear that reaction, but also, you're cognizant of the fact that there's different strokes for different folks. But yeah, just phenomenal, just tremendous, up and down. So Jack, you're my guy. His music's really, really good, but my favorite songs lately, there was one I think it's called Saturn. I think it's like Immortal and Saturn, something like that. But it's like Immortal / Saturn. And then that song So he got. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to it. I've listened to it in every place too. And that's when you really love a song. When you can listen to it in the airport the same way you can listen to it when you about to hoop or you about to lift. That's when you really love a song. So shout out to that boy Jack. Y'all listen to my son Jack. And check out our episode of the Polaroid Podcast at the Polaroid Podcast. I'm going to throw that up on the screen right now at the Polaroid Podcast. You guys can follow. I'm playing at the Polaroid Podcast. I'm going to have it up. Stop. At the Polaroid Podcast, you guys can get at me on Instagram and all Polaroid or all podcast listening platforms. The NFL, AFC, and NFC Championship games. Let's start with the NFC, which was a demolishing by Jalen Hurts and co. Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore and co. A.J. Brown was in Marshawn Lattimore's head the whole game. People forget Devonta Smith won the Heisman Trophy at 160 pounds. He's one of the most reliable receivers in the league, drawing that deep penalty for them on the pass interference and having that toe tap down the sideline, and just his quiet consistency. The Eagles have so many low management, like low as in low maintenance kind of guys, like a Jordan Mailata. When have you ever heard something bad about Jordan Mailata, or heard a coach having an issue with him, or heard anything about Jordan Mailata? All the O-line, Cam Jerkins, Lane Johnson, and then you got Smitty, Devonta Smith, unproblematic guy, family man. He would skip parties in college to watch film. This is an unproblematic dude on the defensive side of the ball. The only guys that you really hear a lot about in the media negatively are Jalen Carter for obvious reasons and CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mean, that's it. I think Darius Slay might have had a little period where the media didn't like him. For the most part, people will tell you Slay's a vet's vet. So, I mean, yeah, the Eagles have a lot of low maintenance guys that get the job done. So they went out there and put up 55. But what was more stark to me is that they stopped Jaden Daniels. I said on the podcast or on the show, I don't think anybody could stop Daniels. I took the harder bet to come to fruition with the Commanders, obviously, but I stand by that. I really thought the Commanders had a shot. And if they're going to do what they were doing to the Commanders, both by scheme and by how hard and fast they were playing. I mean, those dudes were hitting. They were flying across the field, breaking up passes. They were hitting. They were causing fumbles left and right. They were doing everything that you see teams do who are successful. And all we saw was more and more Eagles success. Let's talk about Saquon to end this game. Saquon is Saquon. As soon as he got the ball, that first carry, I was watching on my phone and I was like, damn, he's going to the house. Once Saquon Barkley gets to the second layer of your defense, you better hope it's not even near the edge, because if it's in the middle of the field, at least hopefully there's a third level defender who's going to fly down there and can and sees him coming square and can then make his decision and then shoot at him at an angle. As opposed to if he's on the outside, now this third level defender has to come down and get him at the right angle or give up a touchdown or succumb to his speed, which is second to none. He only competed in track his senior year, and he had marks of 10-9 in a 100-meter, 22-2, I believe, in the long jump, and about 47 in the shot put. And that's only 1 year competing in track and field. Imagine he competed for all 4 years of high school. His marks would be ridiculous, and he'd probably be around the 10-6, 10-5 range. He's a burner, and he understands how to run fast. When he's big, when he's small, when he's a little bigger, all that. I'm sure at Saquon's heaviest in the NFL, he was about 246, 244. And at his lightest, he was probably about 221, 223. In all phases, he knows how to play within his body. He's so strong. He has great dexterity. And I think that college football, for all that's going on, they have to get back to marketing the game how they marketed it, how they used to market the game when Saquon and them were playing. Because I feel like more people knew who he was because of his electric tapes and the way that he was being covered. And there's not a lot of players who are receiving that kind of coverage or getting those tapes because I think networks find it too difficult. It's hard to track down players who have been at the same school for a long time or who have a story like Barkley's where they were committed one place. I think he was committed to Rutgers pretty locally. He's from Pennsylvania, or he's from New Jersey, I think. So he's committed to Rutgers. And then he went to Penn State. There's players like that, but there's not a lot like Barkley, but they can find them. But I think the news is just being a little bit lazy on that front. The Eagles are my favorite to win the Super Bowl, and I'll cover the game in depth later, but they're my favorite because this is the most talented the Eagles have ever been, position by position. They are loaded as a football team. You don't even, and Nakobe Dean was out for the season, and you barely notice. Jalen Carter is going to be should be a first team All-Pro, second team All-Pro, and Jordan Davis is right there cleaning up. He had a big sack this past week. So all across the board, they're playing some of their best football. AFC game, a lot of controversy in that game. Obviously, that catch to Worthy, I don't think it was a catch at all. I think it was mismanaging by the officials. I'm not sure if I want to comment on that fourth down by Josh Allen, because I don't think that one made it either. But the Bills were simply outclassed yet again. They let Mahomes and Reed and co just beat him in chess. And the Chiefs are phenomenal at getting the most out of their players on rookie contracts. And I don't think enough teams are noticing this. Maybe it's because they're good at drafting, or maybe it's because they're good at developing. Who knows? But there's a ton of players that are homegrown on the Chiefs that either play about 5 years on the Chiefs, 6 years on the Chiefs, and get a couple rings because you're on the Chiefs and they contribute to the rings, or they play their rookie contract and then they go somewhere else. But McDuffie, third year in the Super Bowl, Brian Cook, Karlaftis, like Stone Cold Jones. There's a lot of people, Nick Bolton for a while. There's a lot of people that they can get for kind of cheap at first, and then they sometimes they end up being worth a lot. But Kansas City, baby, they are going to ruffle a lot of feathers if they win that Super Bowl. I think be happy for the three-peat, guys. Like you can dislike the way some of this stuff turned out, but as a true fan of the sport, be happy for the three-peat because we're witnessing history. When Mahomes signed that $500 million contract, it was historic. And it wasn't talked about enough, and it was overshadowed because then everyone else signed contracts that had a bigger average money per year. So they were like, who cares about 10 years, $500 million when you get 4 years, 300, whatever he was getting when that was happening. Really like 250. And now you see all the stuff happening with the guaranteed money. So he didn't really get a lot of coverage for that. His 50 touchdown year is arguably what propelled him into getting the coverage that he gets. But Pat Mahomes is that dude. So if you're the Eagles, you gotta take off the head of the snake. That's the only way you're gonna win this thing. You gotta beat the king. If you beat the king, you are king. And you know Philly's gonna go crazy if they win a thing. So I think the Eagles got it over the Chiefs. One thing I'll say for the Bills, as far as game plan, and I talked about primary and secondary running threats, Josh Allen, you know, is gonna get the ball a lot. I don't think Ray Davis got enough touches. You see what Cook did in his touches, he was killing. When you don't have as much of a vertical passing attack as you'd like to have, you got to run the football. And this goes back to the chess of it. You have to find times to run the football. You have to find carries for Davis. And I think on special teams, you gotta leave Codrington back there, Brandon Codrington. He wasn't in the game, unless I'm bugging. I might have missed it, but I just saw Khalil Shakir back there. And Shakir is good. He's shifty, but Codrington is 5th or 6th in the league in yards per return. And it's like a small job that he's incredible at. It's like Matthew Slater. You wouldn't take Matthew Slater out the game to put in Golden Tate because his name is slightly more notable. Like, what are we doing? Shakir is playing in your offense pretty handily, and Codrington has been consistent. So couple of mismanagement items for the Bills, but I don't like the discourse that's going on. You know, a lot of football gurus in a house talking about the 4th and 5 and pressures, and you got dudes that probably have never put their hand in the dirt talking about 9 techs on TikTok. It's crazy, but you know, the Bills will be back. The Bills have a 28, 29-year-old quarterback. They will be back. Their offensive line is full of maulers. They will be back. So remind yourselves you'll be back. If you're the city of Buffalo, I'm sorry you guys had to go out yet again in dramatic fashion. You guys will be back. Don't worry about it. Okay. This is the 6th episode of In the AM with MC. Thank you for tuning in with me. Happy Friday. January is over. Let's get up. It's February, baby.